Today I'm going to show you how to improvise bebop lines over the most common chord progression in jazz music, meaning 2-5-1. Let's use the C major key as an example. And if you learn these 2 arpeggios, really just 2 arpeggios, your lines are going to sound instantly bebop. Because you just need to know how bebop players were and still are thinking about this very common chord progression. So one arpeggio is for the 2nd degree, and the other arpeggio is for the 5th degree. And let's start, of course, with the 2. So with the D minor 7 would be the arpeggio. But bebop players don't really play a D minor or a D minor 7. They think about it as a 4th degree, meaning they play an F major 7. That's what they are thinking about. So if you play that, then you actually have very important notes for the D minor 7 9th chord, because you have the 3rd, the minor 3rd, you have the 5th, not that important, but we have it. Then the minor 7, also very important, and then we have the 9th. So we also have a little more color. It's not just a neutral arpeggio. So we have, and Charlie Parker does that the whole time while playing over a normal 2-5-1. And then, already like that, it sounds pretty bebop, right? You might recognize that from Donna Lee, for example. And now, the most important movement for our line comes and for our arpeggio. So we have to go to the 5, right? To the altered 5. Bebop players almost always play the main 5 of the key as an altered chord. Now, I don't want to talk about the altered scale right now. We're just learning about these 2 arpeggios that you can use. And the 2nd arpeggio would be a G augmented. So if we do a G augmented, it's going to sound like this. And it sounds pretty altered, right? It sounds a little bit outside of the C. Because we have the root, we have the 3rd, and we have the augmented 5th. That is actually a flat 13. So we are playing an altered chord, a chord with an altered tension. And so the idea is to connect these 2 arpeggios and then resolve. And that's very important. When you resolve, you can resolve on the major scale, the C major scale, or of course on the material from the C major 7 arpeggio, right? So basically you can add the C major 7 arpeggio when we resolve. So first, that's the 2, that's the 5, and that's the 1. Right? So when you resolve to the C, you can do whatever you want. You can play the arpeggio, you can play the scale, you can play the scale with the chromatic lines that maybe you learned from my other video. You can check out the description to find it, how to put chromatic lines in your solo. And so your focus, but your focus should be on the 2 and the 5, right? So you should be able to play an F major 7 arpeggio that goes to a G augmented chord and resolve to a note from the C major scale. Better if it's a note from the chord, from the triad or from the major 7 chord of C, of course. So let me give you a couple of examples. as you can see, it's already very bebop sounding, and it's actually very simple to do. You have the arpeggio over the 4th degree, or from the 4th degree, the F major, and you have a G augmented arpeggio, and you resolve it to a note from the C major scale, or even better, to a note from the C major arpeggio. That's it. That's already the beginning to sound bebop over a 2-5-1 progression. So the idea is that we just need to know one major scale, and then we're going to use a concept that I'm going to show you right now to add chromatic notes in between. And so your solo is going to sound a little more elegant or a little more sophisticated, even just on a 1-chord vamp. I'm going to demonstrate it to you. That was just a C major vamp. I just used the C major scale, but you noticed I put some other notes in between. And the concept is really very simple. We just put the notes of the scale on the downbeat, always. So we always have that. We always hear the scale, basically. But we put the chromatic notes in between on the offbeat, always. And so we have like the right notes on the downbeat and the wrong notes on the offbeat. And we're gonna encounter a problem when we do that, and I'll show you why. So if we start like that, and now we have already a chromatism in the scale itself, right? Because between E and F, there is already a half step. So what we have to do when we have a half step already, and we are gonna take the note in the scale from above, and we're gonna resolve on our goal note. And it's gonna be like that. So I'm gonna do G to F instead of going, because like that we would have the F sharp on the downbeat. We don't want that. And that's it basically. We have to do it one more time when we arrive at the C, because between B and C we also have a half step. So it's gonna sound like that, the exercise. That's it. That's the scale I used. When we go backwards, of course, then it's the same thing, but we take the note from the scale from below, of course. So we go. So that's it. That's the whole concept. That's it. If you can do that, then you already have all you need in order to play chromatically. Then you can start your loop like I did before, and you can try to add these notes. And remember, the downbeat are the right notes, the notes of the scale, and the offbeats are the chromatic notes. Then your solo is gonna sound a little more sophisticated just with that trick. Do you struggle to create solos that actually fit the chords? Today, I'll teach you a simple but powerful concept. Once you understand this, you'll be able to improvise, to play solos over any chord progression. Let's dive in and learn about the target notes. What are the target notes? The target notes are basically two different kind of notes. The first and the most important are the chord notes. So meaning if we have a C major 7, then C, E, G, and B. Those are the very strong target notes, especially the third and the seventh. And we, of course, have also a second possibility, and the target notes that we can also land on are the tensions. So what do I mean by tensions? If we stay by C major 7, we also have more notes that we can play outside of the chord. So the fourth or 11th would clash with the third, so that would be the avoid note. So that's definitely not a target note. But we have two tensions that add some color to the chord, meaning the 9th, so the second, and the 13th, meaning the 6th. So those are all target notes. So almost the whole scale, basically, except one note. But then, very important is, of course, how do you use them? When do you land on them? And now I'm going to show you the 3 steps that you can take to master any chord changes. So the step 1 would be to identify your target notes. For example, if we take a very simple chord progression, let's say a turnaround diatonic in C, meaning C major 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, and G7. So those are our 4 chords. And so if we want to be able to play using target notes, then first of all, we need to understand the arpeggios of these chords, because the first target notes are the arpeggios. So let's take, for example, a very simple arpeggio, for example, just 1 octave of all 4 chords, so that you learn to see the different arpeggios. So the first one will be, if we are, for example, in the 5th position, we can use this one, C major, then A minor 7, then D minor 7, and G7. So once we see this, then we can start. Oh, I already land on a target note in the end. I'm going to show you how to do that. We can now, for example, so now that we identified the target notes and we practiced the arpeggios, now we are ready for step 2. And with this second step, we need to connect the different target notes. So how can we do that? Now we are a little more free. We don't just have to play the arpeggios, but we can, for example, try to go from an arpeggio to the next arpeggio in a logical way. So what do I mean by that? If I do, then I don't want to start again from the root. That wouldn't be really a line, right? That's not improvising, that is playing the arpeggios. So let's try to connect the arpeggios. So for example, the next one will be, for example, and then we can go to, and then G, and back. So now that we connected it with melodies, with scales, we can also connect the target notes with chromatic lines as well. So for example, if we start here, C, A minor, then we can do G, and back to C. So same thing, but also adding some chromatics to spice it up a little bit. Now you are ready for the third and most important step. So you need to loop this chord progression, and you try now to improvise with the scale, with chromatics, but to always land on the one of the next bar with the next chord with a target note. And in that case, it's gonna be always a chord note. So I would try to do that first. Let me show you what I mean. You see how it fits the changes? That's perfectly on the chords. Actually, if I would play without the comping, you would still recognize the chord progression. Let me show it to you. You see, even in the end, when I went outside, you could actually understand, oh, G is altering the G, going back to C. So try to do that, and you'll see that your solos are going to fit much more the changes. And then try to experiment with other stuff. So for example, we didn't talk about the second target notes, meaning the tensions. So for example, now you could actually always say, okay, I'm always going to land on the ninth of every chord. Let me give you an example. You see? Always on the ninth. Still working. Different color. Try that and let me know how it affects your playing. So thanks a lot for checking out this quick lesson. And don't forget to drop a like and to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You're gonna find the PDF of this lesson and all other lessons on my Patreon channel for free. You just have to sign up. So you'll find the link in the description. And see you for the next lesson. In today's lesson, I'd like to show you one of the most effective jazz arpeggio technique that you can use in your solos. And I'm gonna also show you how you can blend it into your improvisation. So let's start right away. And I'd like to show you where this idea comes from. It comes from a wonderful solo on Cherokee from Charlie Parker. And he does a very interesting thing over a 2-5-1 at the end of the first A part, I think. And he does this. And this is just a series of diatonic arpeggios in B flat major. So he's superimposing other chords, so to speak, over a 2-5-1. And this is a very interesting technique, and it works just because all these arpeggios are diatonic, meaning in the same key. And he's just playing the degrees of the scale. And what is he doing? I'm going to explain it to you, shifting everything one step higher, because now we are in B flat, but to make it simpler, let's think about it in C major. So in C major, we have all the chords that we can build on on the major scale, right, on every degree of the scale. And what it does, it's basically just taking the arpeggios, the 4 notes arpeggios of the degrees of the scale, and arpeggiating them from the 7th to the root. So he's starting with an E minor 7, and he does so 7, 5, minor 3rd, 1. Same thing one step below with the D minor 7. Then he does C major 7, the 1st degree. Then we have the 7th, so half diminished, B half diminished. Then he does A minor 7, the 6th, then 5, the dominant, G7, and resolves it on the 3rd of the C of the 1. So we can use this technique as well, and we can also expand it and make it our own. And one good exercise that you could do is, for example, you take it from up here maybe, so we have more solutions, and you try to go as low as possible with the same idea. So you do, that's an A minor 7, G7, F major 7, that's what we did already, G7, then we go lower, F, then E minor 7, then D minor 7, C major 7, and of course B half diminished, for example. And so you can go from here to here, and you can use that now to improve your solos and to get some new ideas and some new motives. And I would start practicing that, trying to make some motives out of it. So for example, you see, not just as an exercise, not just the same thing over and over again, but try to make some music with it. All right, so let me demonstrate to you how you could practice it over a chord progression. It doesn't matter which chords, as long as they are all diatonic, so all in C major or in the key you are trying to practice that. So I'm gonna have just a 2-5-1 like Charlie Parker does in C major, and I'm gonna try to make some music with these arpeggios. So let me demonstrate it to you. You see, you can, of course, blend it into your solo, also play other stuff, but trying to use also the arpeggios to get some ideas. So you don't have to play just arpeggios. The idea is you take these arpeggios and you try to make some motives with them. But first, of course, practice just a... And then, when that works, of course, backwards. So I hope that was helpful. And if you want to download the free PDF of this lesson, you can go to my Patreon channel. The link is in the description. And you're going to go directly to the PDF section, and you can download then all the PDFs of all the free lessons that you can find on my YouTube channel. So let's start right away, and let me explain to you that the advice of other people telling you should transcribe is valid. That is a very good idea. That's maybe the one most important thing to do. But it's not enough to transcribe, because if you learn the solo of somebody else, then you're gonna improve many things, but it's gonna be difficult that this solo is really going to show up in your playing. Meaning, if you like something from Pat Metheny, then it's very difficult that a phrase that you learn from Pat Metheny is going to come out of you naturally if you don't do this exercise that I'm going to show you right now. Let's take a phrase that I transcribed from Oscar Peterson, which goes like this. So pretty typical bebop phrase over a 5 that resolves to a 1. In this case, it was a C7. Resolving to F. And this F can be major or minor, it doesn't matter. So C7 to F. And what he does is he's using the bebop scale and some approach notes, and of course the notes of the chord, so the target notes. And there's not so much in it that we don't already know, probably. Bebop scale, we land on the flat 7, right? Enclosure to the 3rd. Double chromatic approach to the root. And then we move to the same double chromatic approach to go to the F, to the root of the F. This is already a lot if you want to learn a new phrase, but then this phrase is just going to come out in your playing as it is. So it's gonna sound like a lick. And probably you're also not gonna be able to do it for a piece that is not in the same key, because now you learned it in C. Now, there are two things that you should do. The first thing you should do is you should move this phrase around, meaning you stay in C, and especially if you are a guitarist. If you're a piano player, it's always the same thing. But if you are a guitarist, then take this phrase and use different fingerings. Play it in different octaves, because it's always going to be different. So for example, let's take this in the same octave, but in another place. So for example, here. You see, same phrase, completely different fingering. That's difficult on the guitar. So this is a very, very, very important first step. Or change octave. For example, you can do it here. Why is that important? Because then you can always, doesn't matter where you are in your solo, you can always play this phrase and always see the target notes of the phrase. Because if you are soloing here and then suddenly you're here, and then suddenly, that's just a lick, right? But if you are here, that makes then sense if you start it there, right? And you go on and you stay in the same range. So that's why you should do this first step. And the second step is the most important one, and it's also the most difficult one. But if you do it, you're gonna become a master, believe me. Take this phrase, but then take a whole solo and move it in all 12 keys. Learn it in different places in all 12 keys. Now let's do it together in all 12 keys with this lick from Oscar Peterson. C to F. F to B flat. B flat to E flat. E flat to A flat. A flat to D flat. D flat to G flat. G flat to B or F sharp to B. B to E. That was again the original fingering. Now E to A. Now A to D. Or if you want to change the fingering, A to D again. Now D to G. And now finally G back to C. Voila, that would be your exercise, and it's going to be difficult, but if you do it, then you have it in all 12 keys with different fingerings, and believe me, this is going to start coming out of you naturally in your solos. And then, of course, you don't have just to play the same phrase, and then maybe parts of it come out, or maybe this influence some other phrases that you're going to play. So for example, you see, work with this material, then it's going to come out at some point. If you're just learning like a pattern or like a lick, it's never gonna come out of your playing.